Shalom, y'all. I'm Angie Lazarus, and I am delighted to be here with you. My research interest has to do with my hometown, which is Birmingham, Alabama, from its founding in 1871 through the 1920s. As a New South city, Birmingham grew really rapidly on the strength of its iron and steel industries. I have not focused this interest yet, but I have recently researched both the local Clavern, the second Klan Clavern, the Robert E. Lee Clavern, and the sham trial of a Methodist Klansman who murdered a Catholic priest here in 1921. One of the dissertations I found sheds light on the situation of Southern girls in this period. The dissertation is called "To Protect Women and Children, Gender, Race, and the Carceral Manifestation of Southern Paternalism." It was written by Allison Robinson for the University of Houston in 2016. She focuses on how female prisons and reformatories sought to reinforce outdated ideas of respectability. Her introduction situates the study not only in its historiographical context, but also in the criminological and sociological materials on crime, gender, and race. The dissertation itself relies largely on primary sources, gubernatorial records and correspondence, prison records, letters, and other personal papers. Robinson argues that the penal system's effort to rehabilitate delinquent women and children into upstanding citizens, that's a quote from the abstract, was really a means of social control for females who were not respectable, though many of them had committed no crime. This is especially true of young people who were unfortunate enough to be the daughters of people who were, for instance, prostitutes. Robinson argues that these efforts were clearly paternalistic, with the state often acting in loco parentis for innocent juveniles, and that they failed. The state failed. I am most interested in chapter 1, which discusses the Board of Lady Managers. This is a real thing. It was established by the state legislature here in Alabama. It was a group of progressive women from Birmingham who were Jewish, Protestant, and Catholic, most of them wives of the city's industrial elite, but some of them single. But they were all respectable women, and they established a hospital for the poor that grew up into UAB Hospital, and also a house of refuge here in Birmingham for delinquent or desperate girls. The body of Robinson's dissertation moves chronologically. So she begins at the turn of the century, turn of the 20th century, because that's when reformatories and juvenile facilities first opened. The first one was Illinois in 1899. She moves next to the interwar period, when there was a redefinition of both crime and of sexuality in medical terms. So a lot of what's going on in the reformatories at that time has to do with making people healthy rather than just behave better. The third chapter focuses on the financial and logistical strains of the Great Depression. And then in chapter 4, she deviates slightly, she says, to focus on the state industrial farm colony for women in Virginia. She focuses on it because there was an inmate-run paper called The Citizen, which Robinson examines for insights into how both the facility and its officers and the women themselves define citizenship and deviance. Finally, she concludes the study with the post-World War II period, arguing that prison and reformatory reform in Alabama and other southern states demonstrates the South's resistance to social change. The other dissertation I perused is one whose title I've come across before. It's called The Ku Klux Klan in Alabama, 1915 through 1954 by Glenn Allen Feldman. It's 725 pages, including a number of appendices and a 20-page bibliography. It was completed in 1996 for Auburn University, and it was directed by the great Wayne Flint, J. Wayne Flint, who is, in my opinion, the historian of Alabama. He is still among us, retired professor emeritus at Auburn now. Feldman argues that Alabama's KKK was not really dormant at any time after its founding. He advances the idea of what he calls soft opposition, that is, conservative, respectable people who oppose the KKK, but not in a decisive way, but more in hidden backroom kinds of ways, and almost always for ulterior political or economic reasons. He argues that, this is a quote, "a broad xenophobia drove the vast majority of white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Alabamians to join the KKK or to only oppose it softly, and that all Klan victims, Blacks, Jews, Catholics, immigrants, the unemployed, moral offenders, liberals, unionists, communists, outside agitators, and civil rights activists represented fundamental foreign threats to racially, culturally, religiously, and politically homogenous state." Yes. Feldman's historiography about the Klan offers criticism of dozens of scholars, a lot of them really respectable ones. And his criticism often boils down to they're just following the conclusions of the people who came before them, and particularly about the periodization of the Klan, which he thinks is just false. It's my opinion that the way the Klan reinvented itself so rapidly and grew so rapidly does suggest that there was something before that. And in Birmingham, I know there was something before that. In any case, the study itself, maybe this is ironic, the study itself actually starts in 1916 with the establishment of the Robert E. Lee Clavern in Birmingham. And obviously the birth of the second Klan, and it only briefly treats the period after the Depression. So it really does focus on the second Klan and its continuity backward and forward in time. It's based on, as I said, a 20-page bibliography of legislative records and correspondence, newspaper and journal and other accounts of events, Klan records, excerpts from the Courier magazine, for example, dozens and dozens of them, and 18 dissertations, theses, or unpublished studies. So it's a very extensive body of research. This explains why I think that though you can see Dr. Flint's influence very clearly on Feldman's dissertation, his conclusions are decidedly different from Wayne Flint's conclusions, which almost always focus on religion and religious activity. That's his specialty. I have found both of these studies really helpful in giving me some bigger picture insight about the things that I am interested in researching. So I hope they're interesting to you too. Have a great one. Bye.